I've been using Ffraegar all season long, and she is an amazing archer hero in Call of Dragons. So in this video, I'm going to give you an overall guide. Why is it that she works so well, even with flying units? And in this video, I'll share with you my thoughts on what truly are the best talents and artifacts. So stick around for everything you need to know about Ffraegar. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today's video is sponsored by the makers of Call of Dragons. And as I looked through my roster of videos, I realized I talked about spinning the wheel for Ffraegar, I talked about how I've been using her, I put her in best pairing videos, but I didn't actually make the guide, giving you everything you need to know about Ffraegar. So that's what this is. And you can use the timestamps located in the description of this video to navigate to any one part that you care about, and also consider subscribing for Call of Dragons videos designed to help you get value and smash your enemies. So let's get started by doing a skills review. We'll talk about her talents and why I'm really just going to stick with a Marksman build if I'm using her. And then we'll go over and look at the artifacts and pairings, okay? So let's start with the skills. And these were kind of deceptive to me. They don't seem as strong as they are. She is a ranged hero. She deals skill damage to the target, 600 factor, and gives herself normal attack focus, increasing normal attack crit rate by 60% for 7 seconds. So for the next 7 seconds, not only is she done her upfront 600 damage factor, but she's also getting additional attack damage from the sort of white numbers that you do. There's a chance that you will do bonus damage. The next skill is really weird, and I actually need to look at a report before and after I upgrade this skill, because the increments here are either listed incorrectly or there's a massive jump when you go from 4 to 5 points in this skill. It's called Knocked and Loaded. Very funny pun there with knocking an arrow, okay, as opposed to locked and loaded. But anyways, it's 15% normal attack damage and 15% defense. Very good things for archers. Normal attack damage is sort of what archers do, is normal attack and counterattack. That's their jam. And then defense is good because archers just tend to be in the front because of their shorter range. Next skill, Marksman unit, physical attack, 20%, and normal attack, critical damage bonus. Okay, 30% critical damage. So she is giving you a huge chance to crit and then boosting the damage you deal when you crit. Yeah, I mean, really good. Final skill, okay? Falconer's Charge or Falconeer's Charge. When Ffraegar's Legion launches a normal attack, that is when they directly target somebody, Ffraegar's got a 30% chance, or rather a 20% chance to gain 30% haste, and reduces the target's rage accumulation speed by 20% for 5 seconds. So she has a chance to slow the target and also make it so that they don't gain as much rage, making them very vulnerable to be taken down. Finally, when awakened, she only gains 200 damage factor. She is one of the heroes that it really doesn't matter to awaken her necessarily. There is not some huge incremental boost in power. Let me show you what I mean by that, okay? If we got to look at Nico, okay? When Nico's Legion launches a normal attack on the target, if it has a defense break, he has an 80% chance to deal hero skill damage factor of 200 with no internal cooldown listed. Nico starts doing just like crazy damage, especially if you pair with Kanara once you get his awakening. If we look at Nika, for example, okay, Nika has a really crazy awakening skill. When Nika's Legion launches a normal attack, they have a 50% chance to deal hero skill damage factor 500 if the target has fewer than 50% of units remaining. This triggers once every 2 seconds. Wow. These are big effects, but they only happen when the hero is awakened. Okay, an extra 200 damage factor on the active skill of Ffraegar is not all that exciting. That's what I'm trying to say. Unless there's some other thing in here I'm just missing, but I don't think that I am. I'm literally looking word for word, and it's only 200 more damage factor on the active skill. That to me feels like minor importance. So if you are working on your Ffraegar and you're wondering, should I focus on certain skills? I think the first two are very important. The second skill is important because it is giving you defense and because the last point gives you such a big boost compared to all other points in this skill. So in an ideal world, you take her to 5-5, 1-1, or even max the first three skills and leave the last skill last. But I think it's unlikely you'll do that. Chances are you'll want to max the first two and then just star her up as fast as you can in order to be able to have access to more of her skills. I suppose you could leave her at lower stars, but maxing the first two skills is what most people will do. Or they'll even just max the first skill, unlock the rest to have it go random, which is kind of what I did because I used her for fighting really right away. Now, I have used Ffraegar as the primary, and I've used her as the secondary. I think that the best use case for Ffraegar is actually with her as the secondary. And when she's the secondary, her talents don't matter. So if you are using her as the primary, there's really just one talent build I'd recommend. I am actively using that talent build now, and that is a Marksman-based build. Why would I recommend a Marksman build? Because Peacekeeping is obviously not a tree you're going to use. Mobility is obviously a tree that is not all that exciting. It's about movement, and that's really not what we're doing with Ffraegar here. What we're doing with Ffraegar is bringing archers, and we're hitting hard. To do that, I like taking the march speed. Look, hey, if you get caught out because you got freaking not enough march speed to get away, it's a big problem. I take the march speed. I take less damage because you're in the front and you're eating a lot of damage. And I take bullseye. When your legion consists entirely of marksmen, they gain some stacks of attack every 10 seconds when they're in battle. Each stack will increase their attack by 1%, but your normal attacks remove stacks. So it's basically like you periodically get an attack boost from bullseye. I think that's fine. I made my archers more healthy, which I think was a great choice, and I went all in on the rage accumulation plan. If I can get my active skills on Ffraegar to go more quickly, man, I mean, that damage is just big. Then I went and I decreased my defense, but increased all damage dealt. So originally I felt like this route of taking marksman hit point gain is a little bit passive, but given that I'm basically losing defense later to gain damage, I feel good about this overall balance in my tree here. And then lastly, I took Pursuit. When your legion consists entirely of marksmen, they inflict fragility when casting your rage skills, increasing the normal attack damage taken by 10%. Triggers once every 10 seconds. Okay? That is the build that I went with. Now, from here, you have so many great options. Option number one is to go into the mobility tree for some more march speed. Option number two is to just get normal attack, because obviously that's good here. Option number three is to go for more rage generation. Yeah, her active skill's really good. And the fact that you've got extra rage accumulation speed makes this even better. And lastly, you can boost your counterattack damage, which is something I didn't do. I would consider it in the future. But I just felt like all the other things were more important. So I took her to level 60, and unfortunately, she's only got 2 points in Last Word, increasing your counterattack damage. There are things that I skipped, like if you're really hunting mages, right? You could move in on talents that do that. I don't particularly like the talents when you defeat an enemy legion. This to me feels like if you're a super whale, that's a thing you could go for. I didn't really want to boost my attack when I get low, right? Egoism's pretty good. Reducing the hero skill damage taken could be good. If your legion's hit with a normal attack, they have a chance to slow the target. Binding Snare could be good. But I felt like overall, this balance of the tree was kind of the best. Now, from here, there is something that I do want to talk about, which is a Darkling build. And I used this build at the start of the season when I leveled up Ffraegar. So what I did is I used Ffraegar as primary when I was battling Darklings, and I used Hosk as the primary when I was battling in PvP. So I used a Ffraegar Hosk combo. But the reason that I went in on a Darkling build to start is that I got Predestination, getting extra tactics manuals when I was defeating Darklings and Dark Creatures. That's really it. Also, you get some extra rewards. So especially if you got a very peaceful season, it could make sense to go in on a build like this. You battle a bunch of Darklings, you get some extra experience out of it. You're really not going for this tree necessarily to handle the Darklings better, although Darklings get tougher and tougher. This is really more intended to just give you some extra loot, and then after getting that extra loot, you use a reset to switch to a build that you actually want to use, assuming that you will use Ffraegar as the primary. Now, I never used a mobility tree with her. I suppose theoretically you could make a mobility-based tree. The problem here, though, is that I'm just not excited about being really fast, but not being able to hit hard. There are just a lot of other troops that I feel like are better for that. If you were to go for a mobility-based tree, the one thing I will advise you is that this is a thing you might do with flyers. Then I could understand a mobility-based tree, specifically if you're using flyers. But you're not going to be able to really enjoy these marksman-based points unless your flyers are also marksmen. And even then, like, wouldn't you just go with a marksman build? You see what I'm saying? So if we review her skills again and we talk about pairings, the weirdness of Ffraegar that you'll notice is that, okay, the second skill cares a little bit about... Wait, no, it doesn't care about marksman. It gives defense, but it doesn't specify marksman. Okay, so then what about the third skill? Okay, the third skill gives marksman unit physical attack. Okay, that cares about marksman. What about the fourth skill? That doesn't care about marksman. Ffraegar cares very little about actually being with marksman, which is super weird. There's only 15% physical attack bonus that is marksman specific. The other thing that might be marksman specific is the 30% normal attack crit damage. And it's a little bit unclear to me if that is marksman normal attack crit damage or all normal attack crit damage bonus. I suppose if we wanted to find out, I could bring a march home and we could just see what happens. Okay, so I did go and battle a Darkling to get this information. And it does look like marksman unit normal attack crit damage, which is the skill we were just looking at, it is marksman specific. So basically the third skill is marksman specific, whereas you can see she's got an overall Legion defense boost and an overall normal attack boost here. That's 10%. That second skill does not care about marksman. Okay, so it does look like Ffraegar's third skill does care about marksman for both pieces of it. Second skill, fully just whatever troop type is good to go. Okay, so for pairings, the best pairing for Ffraegar is hands down going to be a Sindrian primary. And I have started working on him for the next season because it's apparent that we're now going to get a lot of Sindrian in the upcoming season, probably 2 strongest lords, and maybe even some more Ffraegar wheels, by the way. If you played through season 1+, which is potentially the first time she's available, or if you're just jumping into season 2, Ffraegar is going to be available from the Wheel of Fortune. It's called the Lucky Spin. And also the Wheel of Destiny at the start of the season. So Sindrian primary, Ffraegar secondary is the jam. His goal with Sindrian is to make it so you do extra normal attacks. So boosting your normal attack crit damage and damage overall and crit chance is crazy with Ffraegar. These two are monsters together. They are arguably one of the best pairs in the game at the time of this recording. From there, I felt like pairing with Hosk was really good. Why is that? I like Hosk as the primary for the Precision Talent tree. The Precision Talent tree gives you things like extra normal attacks and also extra normal attack damage, which is really, really great. However, I also used, for the majority of the season, Ffraegar as the primary and Hosk as the secondary. Because when Hosk is the secondary, he just straight up gives you 40% more normal attack boost, which is a huge boost to the overall damage you deal from normal attacks. So I felt like that was a really great play. I think that was the better combo, but both ways really works well. I mean, on the one hand, you use Hosk as the primary. He's giving you defense from one of his skills over here instead of normal attack when he's the primary. But the advantage of this route is that you buff yourself. Then all your normal attacks are going to do a bunch of extra damage from Ffraegar. The other way around is you buff yourself with Ffraegar, and then Hosk will also buff you, and for a time you'll be getting the benefit of both of them, but it's not quite as much overlap as when you have Hosk as the primary. I feel like these combos were equally-ish as good. Of course, you could go and pair with other Marksman heroes. You could pair with Nico, and it would be great. You could pair with Kanara, and it would be great. I will point out that Kanara boosts your normal attack damage. If we look at Nico, he is giving you some counterattack and normal attack damage boost as well when you activate your rage skills. So these would also be fine pairings. I do generally think, however, that due to the defense break synergy of Nico and Kanara and the Rattle Spear, that those heroes are better off being paired together. And if you really wanted to, with either flying units or not flying units, if you wanted to get area of effect damage, I freaking loved using Craig. Now, I used Craig primarily with an Eagle March, which was really fun. I've talked about that in other videos. But you can use Ffraegar and Craig, and he only cares a tiny amount about having flying units. Just a tiny amount. You're missing out on, 10% defense, and that's it. Otherwise, his area of effect damage is completely wicked and very, very good. So I think Ffraegar with Craig is a combo that definitely slaps. And lastly, of course, can't forget Gwanwyn. If you really wanted, you could pair with Gwanwyn. I don't think there's particular synergy here. She does a bunch of damage over multiple turns. She gives you march speed, which is nice. Attack is good. You get some extra damage when you're healthy. You have a chance to do a damage over time on the enemy. That's nice. It's nice. But there's not particularly synergy. Gwanwyn's just an overall solid hero, and you could pair them. The final pair, we go through so many of these. The final pair you could do is Thea. And Thea is a weird one. It makes your marksman more tanky, and I'm not opposed to that. Marksmen get hit a lot because they end up being in the front. So to make it so that, Thea's not doing as much damage here, she's shielding for you. But what she is going to do is give your March a lot of sustain in the sort of frontline position where it's getting focused. I actually think Thea is an okay combo, but I'm not going to say it's an amazing combo. Okay, the best combo is Sindrian and Ffraegar. I think your next best option is to pair with Hosk. I think your next best option is to break up some of the other archers you've got and to use them instead with Ffraegar. I think your sort of last option is to go to like Thea. And the value of using a hero like Thea is her versatility, is if you want to use her in different combos and you want to mix her up, then I think there's value to that. That I think is actually the primary value of both Hosk and Thea, is the fact that you level them up at the start of the season and you can shift them around, which is super high value. Okay, now in terms of the artifacts, if you're using Ffraegar with Marksman, she's got the gold crest designed just for her. And I maxed out this artifact, and I found it both rewarding and frustrating. Let me explain. The range of the gold crest template is just short enough that often you will not be able to target the mages you want to target. And what I found is that I would target the mage. I couldn't realize or figure out if it had worked or not. Then I'd look a second later at my screen and I still have a little cancel button available for my artifact. And I'm like, oh, it didn't work. So then I hit cancel, but then somehow I've left combat. Now I'm losing rage. This happened to me all the time. It was shocking. I feel like the modification needed for this artifact is just a tiny tweak, which is that if you're in a certain range outside of the artifact's range, that you can target it and the march will step forward and then hit the thing. That'd be nice. My 2 cents. But regardless, it does do a lot of damage when you do land it on the target. You're looking at 5,500 damage factor when maxed, and gives you a 15% march speed boost for 20 seconds, and immobilizes your target for 5 seconds if you have Ffraegar in the Legion, and does another 1,800 damage factor. So I found that the Gold Crest was amazing when it was good, but I couldn't use it as offensively as I would like. Frequently, there wouldn't be a good target in range. The only way I could eke out some damage with this thing was often by just targeting infantry, which was borderline worthless. So This artifact is cool in theory, but in practice was not as exciting as I wanted it to be. So what are your other options if you are going to use something other than a gold crest? Well, good news, bad news. The good news is there's a lot of other really good marksman artifacts. In fact, specifically, the Shadow Blades is very, very free-to-play friendly and is very good. It does a moderate range area of effect damage template, and this sort of has the same problem the Gold Crest has. It's got a very relatively short range. So if people aren't stepping forward, you're not going to hit them. Or if you aren't close to the enemy, you're not going to hit them. So often you have to expose yourself to really get the Shadow Blades to work nicely. But when it works nicely, it's a lot of damage. Whereas the Gold Crest, I mean, it can be a lot of damage to one target. I made a YouTube short where I did like 80,000 damage, and the target died before I would have, taken another 20,000 damage from the Ffraegar synergy, right? But I think Shadow Blades is your best bet for marksman in general, if, in fact, you don't have a Gold Crest. The other option, if you are pairing with a hero that does a defense break, like Kanara, like Nico, is that actually I think then your Rattle Spear would become your number one choice. Now, this is much more limiting because the passive effect on the Rattle Spear requires you to inflict defense breaks on the enemy. And when you do, you gain defense penetration, 20%, okay, for 7 seconds. It's nice. But, again, although this is my favorite marksman artifact, it requires you to have either Nico or Kanara in the Legion. And chances are that you are using those two together. That's what I would recommend. That you aren't actually going to be using Ffraegar with Nico. If you were free to play and you had the two together, yeah, actually I think Rattle Spear would be better than the Gold Crest in that instance. The epic we can look to if you have been unlucky and not unlocked Shadow Blades free to play would be to go to the Heart Piercer. And the Heart Piercer does moderate damage. It's going to then have a chance to inflict a defense break on the target. It is a 15% defense reduction on the target, which is great. The damage is pretty moderate, 2,000 damage factor. I mean, it's not the 5,800 plus another 1,800 with a snare that you get on the Gold Crest. But like, hey, it's an option, all right? This is probably your best option, I would think. There are some other unusual artifacts that we could start to talk about. One is something that we don't really have access to. It's a Viola's Bow. This is possible to obtain, weirdly enough, from a Forge of Light, but we've only seen it as one of the consolation prizes, not one of the primary prizes. The Viola's Bow has a 10-second artifact silence on all targets you hit, which seems pretty cool. There is also this Veteran's Diary. No, this isn't the one. Hold up. Where is it? There's a book for archers that I think is deceptively good. Where is the archer book? This one. Steady Shot. Your Legion gains Keen. This could be decent. I just don't think much of Keen boosts, and I will point out that these boosts don't stack with each other. So if you had some other way of gaining Keen, this effect, it's not going to stack. Legion Keen attack will not stack with other Keen attack boosts. It will stack with Marksman attack boosts. But anyways, I think I've gone off the deep end on artifacts. I don't think this is the artifact you want to be using anyways. Personally, I'd rather have the damage than the Keen effect from this artifact over here. Okay. There is, gosh. Okay, we're going off the deep end. There is one other artifact that theoretically you could go for that works with Marksman. I personally use it as fodder to feed in the other artifacts. So that tells you, I feel like, everything you need to know. The Heart of Kamasi. This buffs other marksman units. So theoretically, if you were running a lot of marksman units, then okay, you have my attention. Physical attack boost, normal attack boost for 10 seconds total. I don't know, man. It just doesn't excite me. It really doesn't. I think the other artifacts are more punchy. The idea that an enemy is going to stand around and let you do big damage feels low to me. The instant damage dealers are, in my estimation, the way to go. So with all that said, I'm looking forward to battling with Ffraegar in the next season. I am going to use Sindrian primary, Ffraegar secondary, and it should be a lot of fun with big Gold Crest damage. And if you want to see that, consider subscribing to the channel. Alternatively, if you want to see when I did the lucky spins for Ffraegar, I'll have a card in the end screen in just a second. And if you want to see a list of what the best heroes are in the game as of this moment in time, I'll have a card in the end screen for that in just a second.